The creepy murder in room 1046. Introduction. The walls of room 1046 held a secret, but someone was desperate to keep it buried forever. The year was 1935, and Kansas City was rocked by a gruesome and mysterious death that still sends chills down the spine of anyone who dares to learn about it. Room 1046 at the Hotel President had been the scene of what seemed to be a routine hotel stay for one man, but it soon became the site of a dark and twisted crime. The man, an enigmatic figure, was found in a condition so bizarre, so terrifyingly incomprehensible, that it would remain one of the most perplexing murders in American history. The victim, 28-year-old Roland T. Owen, had checked into the hotel under a false name, with no luggage and an air of secrecy about him. Just days later, he would be found bleeding, bound, and horrifically injured in that very room, leaving behind a trail of eerie clues, cryptic messages, and a case that remains unsolved to this day. How did Roland, or whoever he really was, end up in such a violent and macabre situation? Was it a crime of passion? Was there something more sinister at play, perhaps even linked to the dark underworld of the time? What followed was an investigation full of dead ends, conflicting testimonies, and unanswered questions that have fueled decades of speculation. The mystery of room 1046 has been part of Kansas City's folklore for nearly a century, and its eerie atmosphere still lingers, keeping those who dare to uncover its story on edge. With an identity that remains uncertain and a murder that defies logic, this chilling case continues to haunt the minds of investigators and armchair detectives alike. What happened in room 1046? And who was behind the gruesome murder that took place there? Background story: in the early months of 1935, Kansas City, Missouri, was experiencing the typical bustle of urban life during the Great Depression, though the shadow of hard times weighed heavily on everyone. It was against this backdrop that a dark and strange tale would unfold, one that would be whispered about for decades to come, and that would remain shrouded in mystery, unsolved for nearly a century. The Hotel President, a grand hotel with a storied past, was a notable fixture in downtown Kansas City. With its prime location, the hotel catered to traveling businessmen, tourists, and anyone seeking a night's stay in a city that was becoming known for its jazz clubs, speakeasies, and vibrant cultural life. It was an upscale establishment, offering rooms with an air of sophistication and luxury. But little did anyone know that on one fateful night, a horror would be taking place in one of its very rooms. Room 1046, a humble, unassuming hotel room on the 10th floor, would become the site of a gruesome and bizarre crime that would baffle investigators for years. It was here that a man, whose true identity would become a part of the mystery itself, would be brutally attacked and left to die. His name was Roland T. Owen, or at least that's what he checked in as. On January 2nd, 1935, a man entered the Hotel President under the name Roland T. Owen, a name that would become synonymous with one of the most unsettling unsolved cases in American history. The man, approximately 28 years old, checked into the hotel alone. He carried no luggage with him and paid for his stay with cash, a detail that immediately raised suspicion. He requested a room on the 10th floor, room 1046, a room that would later be known not just for its number, but for the horror that unfolded within its walls. Owen, according to hotel staff, was described as a man who appeared to be in a hurry, giving off an air of someone who was attempting to stay under the radar. His unremarkable appearance, dark hair, and nondescript clothing made him blend in perfectly with the general population, but his actions hinted at something far more sinister. When he was escorted to his room, Owen asked that the door be locked from the inside and the key removed, further raising the alarm in the minds of those who observed his strange behavior. He was a solitary figure, not engaging in conversations or drawing attention to himself. He merely wanted to stay in his room without disturbance, it seemed, though hotel staff would later reflect that something was off about the man. Owen remained in room 1046 for a few days. During his brief stay, he did not interact much with the other hotel guests, nor did he seem to have a regular routine. However, the few times he did interact with hotel staff, his behavior was noted to be unusual. The most telling of these occurrences came when Owen received a strange phone call from someone while in his room. The conversation was brief, but Owen's tone changed drastically during the call. He grew agitated, and then, after hanging up, he was overheard muttering to himself, as if to try to calm himself down. It wasn't until the night of January 4th that the true horror would unfold. At around 7:30 p.m. that evening, hotel staff, who had been making their usual rounds, heard a strange noise coming from room 1046. The noise sounded like someone was either fighting or struggling, and it was accompanied by what appeared to be muffled shouting. Concerned for the safety of the guests, the staff attempted to knock on the door, but there was no answer. They knocked again, and still, nothing. After hearing the unsettling noises continue, the decision was made to break down the door. Upon entering the room, the scene they encountered was nothing short of nightmarish. Inside the dimly lit room, Roland T. Owen was found, badly beaten and barely alive. His body was covered in bruises, and there were visible signs of torture. The man's eyes were swollen shut, and he had been strangled, though his cause of death wouldn't be immediately apparent. He had also been bound with a piece of cord, which suggested that he had been restrained at some point during the attack. Blood was everywhere, on the bed, the floor, and even on the walls. But most chillingly, there was something peculiar about the way Owen's body was positioned. He was lying motionless, face down on the floor, his hands bound tightly behind his back. An eerie detail that would haunt this case for years was the fact that the room had been locked from the inside. There was no sign of forced entry, and the door was secured by the victim himself. How was the murderer able to get in, and how had they managed to leave without being caught? The scene in room 1046 would continue to baffle investigators. A quick examination of Owen revealed that he was still alive but barely conscious. As hotel staff rushed to get medical assistance, Owen was taken to the nearest hospital. He was barely able to speak, but when he did, his words were nonsensical and incomprehensible. The few things he was able to say before slipping into unconsciousness were strange and disjointed. He gave no real explanation for his injuries or how the attack had happened. The most chilling part of his statements was that he refused to identify himself beyond the name Roland T. Owen. When asked about the circumstances of his attack, Owen offered no coherent response. His last words were, "I don't know what happened," before his breathing grew shallow and he died in the hospital just a few hours later. It was clear that his attacker had a vicious agenda, and the fact that Owen could not recall any details made the case even more perplexing. Even as police began their investigation, the questions mounted. Who was Roland T. Owen? Why was he in room 1046? Who had done this to him, and why? Was it a random attack, or was there something more sinister at play? What added to the intrigue was the lack of clues regarding the assailant. The investigation was plagued by dead ends. No fingerprints were found at the scene of the crime, and Owen's mysterious background only deepened the mystery. Furthermore, there was no clear motive for his murder, and the clues left in the room only led to more questions than answers. Room 1046, once just another nondescript hotel room, would now become a symbol of unexplainable tragedy. The hotel staff, the police, and anyone who learned of Owen's demise were left grappling with one unsettling question. Who was Roland T. Owen, and what had led to his violent and untimely death? This case remains one of the most chilling, unsolved mysteries in American criminal history, and as the years go by, its mystery only grows deeper. The story of room 1046 has captivated true crime enthusiasts, amateur sleuths, and those intrigued by the bizarre twists and unresolved questions surrounding Owen's death. It stands as a haunting reminder of how the most ordinary of places can conceal the darkest of secrets. The incident, a gruesome and bizarre murder. The evening of January 4th, 1935, at the Hotel President in Kansas City, Missouri, turned into a chilling mystery involving the violent death of a man known as Roland T. Owen. Owen, who had checked into room 1046 on January 2nd, exhibited peculiar behavior. He paid in cash, carried no luggage, and insisted on locking himself in his room with the key removed. Despite unsettling interactions with the staff and strange phone calls, nothing prepared them for the events to come. On January 4th, muffled shouts and sounds of a struggle were heard from room 1046. Concerned, staff entered using a master key and discovered Owen in a grotesque state. Lying in a pool of blood, he was barely alive, covered in bruises, cuts, and strangulation marks, with his hands bound by cord. The room bore signs of a violent assault, blood on the bed, walls, and floor. Yet the locked door baffled investigators, suggesting no clear forced entry. Owen was rushed to the hospital but succumbed to his injuries on January 5th. Before his death, he gave incoherent statements, unable to identify his attacker or explain the assault. His final words, "I don't know what happened," deepened the mystery. The brutality of the attack left police stunned, but the scene provided no fingerprints or evidence pointing to a suspect. Investigators were left with questions about the attacker's identity, motive, and means of entry. Further investigation revealed more peculiar details. Hotel staff mentioned that Owen had insisted on keeping the door locked and displayed unusual behavior. A maid recalled him agitated and paranoid. On January 4th, mysterious phone calls from an unknown woman added to the enigma. She spoke cryptically, hinting that Owen was in danger, but offering no actionable information. The autopsy revealed blunt force trauma and strangulation marks, but no clear weapon. Investigators theorized multiple assailants may have been involved, given the extent of the injuries. The only odd detail was a towel wrapped around Owen's head. Its significance and origin remained unexplained. Attempts to trace Owen's identity were fruitless. His name appeared to be an alias, and no records or acquaintances linked him to anyone. The case became further puzzling when no motive surfaced. Owen had no known connections, disputes, or affiliations with criminal activity. Despite exhaustive efforts by law enforcement, including questioning witnesses and examining evidence, the case remained unsolved. Over time, speculation arose, from theories about organized crime to personal vendettas. Yet nothing explained the brutal killing or answered the core mysteries surrounding Owen's life and death. The murder in room 1046 became one of Kansas City's most chilling unsolved cases, haunting the city's history with unanswered questions about who killed Roland T. Owen, why, and how they managed to leave no trace. The case's eerie details, the locked room, mysterious phone calls, and Owen's anonymity, left it a mystery that still captivates to this day. The investigation. The mysterious murder of Roland T. Owen, discovered in room 1046 of the hotel president in Kansas City, Missouri, on January 5, 1935, has puzzled investigators and captivated the public for decades. With strange circumstances, cryptic clues, and a victim whose true identity remained elusive, the investigation became one of the city's most baffling unsolved cases. The initial discovery. On January 5, 1935, hotel staff entered room 1046 after the guest failed to respond to calls. They found Roland T. Owen barely alive, lying in a pool of blood with severe injuries, including deep lacerations, blunt force trauma, and strangulation marks. A towel was wrapped around his head, though its significance remained unclear. Despite Owen's critical condition, he was disoriented and unable to provide coherent answers to police. The scene puzzled investigators. There were no signs of robbery, the bed was undisturbed, and no weapon was found. The lack of forced entry suggested the assailant was either let in or already present in the room. First steps in the investigation. Detective W.R.W. Hennessy examined the disordered room, which lacked any significant evidence to indicate motive or method. Witness accounts added to the mystery. Hotel employees described Owen as odd and anxious, insisting on locking the room and avoiding social interaction. Staff also reported hearing loud noises from the room the night before he was found. A maid recounted interactions with a visibly confused Owen, including his insistence that he would leave the following morning. An unusual detail came to light. Owen had made phone calls to a woman whose identity was never determined. Witnesses noted his behavior seemed agitated after these calls. Discovering the identity of Roland T. Owen. Identifying Owen was an immediate challenge. He had checked into the hotel under a false name, provided no personal details, and paid in cash. Without any known connections or background, his true identity was initially a mystery. Weeks later, a woman claimed to recognize Owen from a photo, though her identification was deemed unreliable. Further efforts to link him to any family or acquaintances failed, heightening speculation about his secretive past. Lack of evidence and unresolved questions. Detectives struggled with the scarcity of evidence. No fingerprints or murder weapon were found at the scene, and the absence of a clear motive compounded the difficulty. Owen's cryptic behavior raised questions. Was he fleeing from someone? Was he involved in something that led to his death? While robbery seemed unlikely, theories ranged from a love triangle to gang-related violence. However, none were substantiated. The strange role of hotel staff observations revealed Owen's peculiar demeanor. A bellboy described Owen anxiously checking the hallway before opening his door, suggesting paranoia or fear. Other employees noted his frequent insistence on privacy and locked doors. Despite these observations, none provided a clear link to his murder. Unsolved leads and missed opportunities. A critical figure in the investigation was the unidentified woman connected to Owen's phone calls. Many believed she held key information or was directly involved, but police were unable to locate her. Witnesses reported suspicious activity around room 1046. One neighbor heard loud noises and possible conflict the night before Owen was found, while another described a hurried man leaving the hotel. However, these accounts provided no substantial leads. Speculation about Owen's connection to organized crime briefly gained traction due to his possible background ties to criminal elements. But this theory remained unsupported by evidence. The public's role and possible witnesses. Several witnesses came forward during the investigation, but their statements either contradicted each other or failed to yield actionable information. Some suggested hearing an argument in Owen's room, while others described seeing a mysterious figure near the hotel. However, these accounts provided no clear direction. The case goes cold. With no breakthroughs, the investigation lost momentum, and the case went cold. Roland T. Owen's killer and true identity were never discovered. The cryptic details surrounding his death, his use of a false name, the mysterious phone calls, and the absence of clear evidence continue to perplex. Over time, public speculation offered numerous theories, from a romantic entanglement to revenge or accidental death. None could conclusively explain the events that took place in room 1046. The unsolved murder of Roland T. Owen remains one of Kansas City's most haunting mysteries. Despite extensive efforts by police, his death in room 1046 remains a chilling testament to the perplexing nature of certain crimes, where evidence is scarce, motives are elusive, and the answers lie buried in shadows. Theories and speculations. The mystery of Roland T. Owen's death has spurred numerous theories, each attempting to explain the bizarre events in room 1046. While the case remains unsolved, these speculations explore possibilities ranging from organized crime to the supernatural. The murder for money theory. One theory suggests Owen's murder was a robbery gone wrong. Some believe Owen was carrying a large sum of money, making him a target. However, with his belongings left untouched and no sign of theft, this theory faces significant challenges. The killer's apparent lack of motive to steal complicates the idea further. The organized crime theory. Speculation about ties to organized crime stems from Owen using a false name, suggesting he might have been hiding. Kansas City's criminal underworld at the time made this theory plausible, but investigators found no evidence linking Owen to illegal activities or dangerous figures. His murder's peculiar execution leaves questions about whether it was a botched mob hit or an unrelated crime. The jealous lover theory. This theory proposes that Owen was murdered by a jealous lover. Witness accounts hint at his odd behavior and attempts to avoid someone, possibly a woman he had a contentious relationship with. Despite speculation surrounding a mysterious woman, her identity was never uncovered, and no evidence supports this as the motive. The hitman theory. Some believe Owen was the target of a hired assassin. His severe and precise injuries suggest a planned execution. Proponents theorize he may have had a hidden past that culminated in someone orchestrating his death. However, the absence of known enemies or criminal history challenges this explanation. The supernatural theory. A fringe theory speculates that Owen's death involved paranormal elements, such as a ritualistic killing or spiritual attack. This idea stems from the eerie circumstances and lack of evidence connecting anyone to the crime. While intriguing, there is no concrete support for supernatural involvement. The legacy of Roland T. Owen's case is not just about the unanswered questions, but also about how it mirrors so many other unsolved mysteries in criminal history. It is a stark reminder of how easily certain cases can slip through the cracks, leaving behind confusion, heartache, and an endless thirst for answers. Every new mystery, whether it's a murder, disappearance, or strange event, builds on the intrigue left by cases like Owen's. Each one asks us to dig deeper, question more thoroughly, and challenge our assumptions about the world around us. As we continue to study unsolved cases like this one, we also recognize the toll these mysteries take on those involved. Family members, the public, and even investigators are left to grapple with the unsettling lack of closure. The emotional weight of an unresolved death is a burden that doesn't easily fade, especially when it lingers for decades. This case, like many others, leaves us wondering, is justice possible if the truth remains hidden? And how long should we continue to search for answers when the trail grows cold? These are questions that will always remain as long as the case stays unsolved, and they resonate deeply with those who believe in the power of justice and closure. In closing, the murder of Roland T. Owen may never be fully explained, but it continues to serve as a cautionary tale of how easily a life can end in a moment of violence, leaving only questions in its wake. It's a reminder that while time moves forward, some mysteries will forever be etched in the annals of history, their answers forever elusive. As we leave you with these thoughts, remember this quote: "Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to remain forever in the shadows of the unknown." We will never forget Roland T. Owen and the chilling tale of his murder. And while we may not have the answers now, the search for truth will continue, perhaps forever. Who knows? The next episode might just hold the key to another forgotten mystery, one that demands to be uncovered. Keep searching, keep questioning, and never stop looking for the answers that haunt the pages of history.